You find the first one in the mirror, a single, stubborn silver hair sitting right there in the middle of all the brown. And your first instinct for almost everyone is the same. You grab it and you yank it out like you can undo it. But here's the strange part, the part nobody tells you. That hair didn't turn gray. It was never going to stay brown in the first place. And understanding why means understanding that your hair color isn't really about your hair at all. It's about a tiny factory at the root that one day quietly clocks out. So let's start with how your hair gets its color in the first place, because it's weirder than you think. Every single hair on your head grows out of a follicle, a tiny pocket in your skin. And at the base of that follicle sits a little crew of pigment-producing cells called melanocytes. Their entire job is to manufacture melanin, the exact same pigment that colors your skin and your eyes, and to inject it into the hair as it grows. More melanin, darker hair. Less melanin, lighter hair. Different types of it give you everything from jet black to red to blonde. But here's the key thing. Those pigment cells don't last forever. They get used up. So to keep the color going, your follicle keeps a backup supply, a reservoir, melanocyte stem cells tucked away inside it. Every time a hair sheds and a new one grows, that reservoir sends out a fresh batch of pigment cells to color it. Think of it like an ink cartridge with a refill tank built in. As long as the refill tank keeps topping it up, your hair keeps coming in colored. Gray hair is what happens when that refill tank runs dry. This is the part that flips the whole thing on its head. Your hair doesn't turn gray. A hair that's already grown in brown is dead, finished, locked. It can't change color any more than a printed page can reprint itself. What actually happens is that a brand new hair grows in without any pigment at all because the stem cell reservoir that used to color it has run out. Gray hair isn't your hair losing its color. It's your follicle producing a new hair with no color to begin with. The strand isn't gray so much as it's blank, and the way it catches light just reads as silver or white. So the real question was never why does hair turn gray, it's why does the pigment reservoir run dry? For a long time, the basic answer was just aging. The stem cells slowly get depleted over the years, and eventually there aren't enough left to keep coloring new hairs. But in 2023, a team at NYU studying mice found something far stranger. They could actually track these pigment stem cells under a microscope, and they discovered the cells are supposed to physically move back and forth between two compartments inside the follicle, picking up the signal to mature and make pigment in one spot, then resetting in another. What they found in older follicles is that more and more of these stem cells get stuck. They jam in one compartment, stop getting the signal to mature, and just sit there, frozen. They're not dead, they're just trapped, no longer doing their job. Stuck cells, gray hair. And that opened up a genuinely wild possibility. If you could get those cells unstuck and moving again, you might be able to reverse graying at the source. That's still early mouse research, not a bottle you can buy, but the mechanism is real. Now, two things almost everyone wants to know. First, is it genetic? Largely, yes. When you go gray and how fast is heavily influenced by the genes you inherited. If your parents went silver early, you probably will too. There's even a specific gene linked to graying called IRF4, which helps regulate melanin. So if you're going gray at 30, you can mostly blame your ancestors. Second, the big one, does stress actually turn your hair gray? For decades, this was dismissed as an old wives' tale. Then, in 2020, a Harvard team led by Yachie Husi ran the experiment properly, and the answer turned out to be yes, with a real mechanism behind it. When you're under serious stress, your fight-or-flight system, the sympathetic nervous system, fires hard and floods your hair follicles with a chemical called norepinephrine, and that chemical forces the pigment stem cells to all activate at once and burn out, draining the entire reservoir in a sudden rush. In mice, just a few days of acute stress permanently wiped out their pigment stem cells. The damage didn't reverse. So no, stress grays are not a myth. The nervous system really does have a direct line to the color factory in your hair. But let's also kill a couple of myths while we're here. The classic story of someone's hair turning white literally overnight from a single fright? That's almost certainly exaggerated. Pigment is already locked into hairs that have grown, so existing strands can't suddenly change. What stress can do is speed up how fast new gray hairs come in. And that old warning that if you pluck one gray hair, 2 or 3 will grow back in its place, completely false. Plucking a gray hair just gives you one slightly damaged follicle and the same gray hair growing right back. You're not multiplying anything, you're just being mean to your scalp. Which leaves one last question, the interesting one. Why would we evolve to do this at all? Why broadcast our age with a big visible signal on top of our heads? One idea is that it's simply a side effect, that stem cells running down is just what happens to an aging body, and the gray is meaningless. But there's a more intriguing hypothesis, that visible aging served a social purpose. In a human group, gray hair marked the elders, the ones who'd survived the longest and carried the most knowledge. It became a signal of experience, of status, of who you listened to when things went wrong. The silver hair wasn't a flaw, it was a credential. So the next time you spot that first silver strand in the mirror, before you reach up to yank it, remember what it actually is. It's not your hair dying, it's a tiny pigment factory at the root, after years or decades of faithful work, quietly hanging up its coat. The hair isn't broken, the color machine just clocked out. So here's my question for you. When you find a gray hair, are you a plucker, a dyer, or do you just let them come? Tell me in the comments, and if you've earned a full silver head, wear it like the credential it is.